Welcome to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. We're so happy to have you here today. It's a great feeling to be in the same room with people who are all committed to the same thing, which is getting more young people educated, because we know all the data is there that a college degree is a major step towards a good quality of life, a good life, health, economic prosperity, and we all know that. So thank you so much for being here. Our blood does run very bright orange, and so you are on Rocky Top. You're a volunteer now. I officially make all of you volunteers. We take that term really seriously here. Every new student immediately comes to this campus knowing what it means to be a volunteer, and we say it simply: step forward with a little bit of courage, act and make a difference. And the first night they're here before classes, 8,000 of them this last year, new freshman students and transfer students, all in the auditorium, raising their hand and taking the pledge. This is part of it. I promise, in moments big and small, to step forward, to lead, to serve, and light the way for others. That is moving when you hear 8,000 students the night before class commit to being a volunteer, and we don't let them out of that commitment. We're all partners here in a great challenge that our state and country has right now. Not enough people pursuing a college degree. But I want to take a slightly different angle just for a couple minutes and talk about how important it is that we continue to partner. It's one thing to get the students to college, and it's another to keep them here and help them graduate and move on to a good life. So I want to just say a couple of things that we know about and that we're operating on here at UT Knoxville. One of the things we're really proud of is this last year is the highest retention rate we've ever had, 91.1%. Yeah. And UT Knoxville's been hovering around the low 80s for a long time, and this focus that we have on a sort of a positive mindset, instead of a deficit mindset, a positive mindset. Our responsibility is to help people find the future for themselves, and that involves an academic program and so much more. One of the things we know, two incredibly important ingredients to succeeding at college are confidence, and the other one is community. We don't admit anyone to UT Knoxville without the academic preparation to succeed. Every single person comes in here with generally the same level of abilities. What hangs people up is the lack of confidence, looking around thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing here. And that's often true of first-generation students. It's true of veterans. It's true of students who come from some very small communities. It's true of our black and brown young men. We've identified groups that need some special attention, but it's not help with their grades, it's help with their confidence and help with establishing a sense of community. So we've done a couple things that are making a difference. And I just share this with you because I think all of you, as you work with the colleges and universities, we ought to be pressing on, okay, and what are we doing to help them succeed once they get here? So a couple of things. Yes, all the students take strengths finders. Every student on this campus, I challenge you to find one in the hallway and ask them, what are your top 5 strengths? How many people in here have taken a strengths finder? Okay, a lot of people. So here's my top 5 strengths: strategic, achiever, positivity, futuristic, and maximizer. I engage with students around that all the time. And why have we done this? Because people who are successful in life are successful because they leverage their strengths. Mostly at colleges and universities, we get students in and we start acting about what's wrong with them. And it's like, if you don't do this, this will happen to you. If you don't do this, you'll lose points. If you don't do this, and instead we're taking a different approach here. The second thing that we've done, in addition to we've had 19,000 students take their strengths, know their strengths so far in the last 3 years. We've also begun establishing these unique success academies oriented towards students who share the same lack of confidence, let's say. So we have a success academy that's been so successful for veterans. Veterans need support, but not the same kind of support that an 18-year-old living in the dorm needs. We have success academies for first-generation students, for students coming from our flagship high schools. And we've had a lot of success this last 2 years with the Success Academies oriented towards black and brown young men who come here. They have the highest dropout rates. They used to. Now they have the highest retention rates. So we know that if you put people together, if you put people together in communities where they feel like I have at least a friend, having one friend makes a huge difference in staying in college. And if they have some confidence, it makes a big difference. So I'm proud of what we're doing. I share that because I think it's important. I hope while you're here today that you can interact with one another around some of those ideas. Now, the best thing I get to do today is introduce someone that needs no introduction, and it's always fun to introduce my boss. I want to say a couple of things about Randy Boyd while he goes out there where he can't hear me. Randy Boyd, there's no bigger champion for education, for a college education in the state, probably in the country, than Randy Boyd. It is part of his being and part of what motivates him every single day. You know he's one of the founders of TnAchieves. You know the work he did under Governor Haslam. And you know that he is the UT system president. And that means he's got 5 campuses. I'll admit this campus probably takes up a lot of his time because more people, more challenges. But we've got 4 other wonderful campuses. Randy has been an advocate for making college affordable for years. And as a first-generation student himself, he knows exactly what it's like to be a first-gen student, to show up on campus and look around and think, I'm not sure I really belong here. And he tells that story over and over and over again. So I'm really, really thrilled to introduce my boss and our biggest champion in this state for college, for education and college degrees, Randy Boyd.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, Dondi. So it's great to be with all of you. I always love these type of events because I'm around a lot of people that have the same passion that I do and care about education. It's just fun to be in this crowd. So thank you all for making the trip. Some of you coming from a long ways, some just from Knoxville. I see my TnAchieves team here. But thank you all for being here. And probably like you, I'm kind of disappointed that it's me speaking here today. I was expecting Governor Haslam. He was supposed to give the 15-minute introduction to how we started TnAchieves and Tennessee Promise in the state of Tennessee. And haven't heard him give that story in a while. So I was really excited until yesterday morning I got a note, by the way, the governor can't make it. Can you do it? So you're stuck with me. And many of the folks that are on the TnAchieves team have heard me share this many times before. So hopefully there's a few new folks in the room that I can share how our story began. And I'll share the story with you just to make the point that the Tennessee Promise, as it is today, was not an overnight success. This was something that started small and built over many years with the leadership of Krissy DeAlejandro, who's in the room, is going to be joining us here in a few minutes up on the stage to have a round table. I'll start with the start, and that was a breakfast on my back porch with Mayor Ragsdale. You see, I had this idea. So before I started on this journey, I was a business guy, and I was a dog fence salesman. That was my business. If anybody's ever bought an invisible fence or knows of those, that was my company. So being a dog guy, I had this idea that we would make Knoxville the most pet-friendly city. Now, there was a whole reason why I wanted to do that, but that's a whole other story for another convention, but with pet lovers. But anyway, we wanted to make Knoxville the most pet-friendly city in America, and I needed the governor to help me because one of the things I wanted to do was to donate money to create dog parks so that we could make this a very friendly place to have a dog. So the mayor comes and joins me up for breakfast, and I make the pitch about the dog parks, and he said yes to everything I asked for, and like every good politician, he had a quid pro quo. He said, "Sorry, guys," he said, "I will help you with your wish if you'll help me with my vision." And his vision was he wanted to make sure every young person in Knox County had the opportunity to go to a technical college or a community college free of tuition and fees. And we particularly wanted to target what we referred to at the time still as those that were underserved, those that maybe didn't have the athletic or academic ability to go for free, so they're going to have to pay, but their families didn't have the money to pay, so they're going to have a hard time going. But probably the biggest factor in their lives was they didn't have a mentor, somebody in their life that had been to college to help guide them and encourage them. And so we created a program that would do 3 things, and we actually did this mostly on the back porch with Krissy's help and doing a little listening around the state. But the 3 components of the program were, one, we make it a last dollar scholarship in which private donors would donate the money to let them be able to go to college. We'd help them get all the state and federal money that was possible. Pell and in the state of Tennessee, we have HOPE and TS AA. So we had several different programs, but whatever was left over, private donors would make up the difference. So we could tell them you could go for free. Now, I grew up as a Boy Scout, and Boy Scouts, anytime you earn a badge, you have to do a service project. So my only contribution to this program initially was just the idea that, well, you know, if the community is going to do this for the students, they should do something back for the community. So each semester, they will do 1 day's worth of community service. And that gives them some skin in the game. When people say it's free, technically not, because they do have to give some service back. And what we found, and I'll maybe come back to this later, but what we found is that this community service is actually a key part of their learning. So many get engaged with something in the community that they wouldn't have otherwise discovered, and oftentimes start a whole life of philanthropy and giving back as a result of this requirement that they have to do. And the third part, and this looking back, and we've done a lot of studies. I see Dr. Fox here. His center has done some studies to confirm this, but the most important factor in the whole program was the mentoring component. We decided, you know, these young people need somebody to encourage them, to support them, and so we'll require them to have a volunteer mentor. I've been a volunteer mentor for 15 years now, every year since the program has begun. And I can tell you, it makes such a huge difference in these young people's lives. Every year I'll get about 5 young people, young men, usually matched by gender. I'll get usually about 5 young men that I'm mentoring. Every year there's one that probably doesn't work out. For whatever reason, he joins the Army or just gets a job or something, but for whatever reason, he doesn't go to college. There's usually about 2 or 3 that they're going to be fine whether I was there or not. I help however I can, but they're going to be fine. But almost every year, inevitably, one of those 5 is some young man that really needs my help. And I'm not helping them with their filling out their application or helping them with any type of subject matter. The most important thing that you do is provide them that word of encouragement, that support. I'll share one story. I'll make up a name. This isn't his real name, but say there's a young man, and this was like 7 years ago, but true story, different name. This young man named Dustin. And what I would do as a mentor is always invite the parent or parents, usually it's just a parent, to pizza with their son, and just to get to know each other. It's not a requirement of the program, but it was something I would do. And I remember that year we all met for pizza, and Dustin came with his mom, and we got to know him and his mom, and found out that his dad had left him when he was very young, so he really never knew his dad, so he only had his mom. About 2 months later, the counselor at the high school called me and said, I just want to let you know that Dustin's probably going to drop out of the program. His mother has left him. He doesn't know where she's at, and he's now living with his sister and his brother-in-law. So I called Dustin, and he says, you know, Mr. Boyd, I don't have a car. I don't have transportation to get to college. And I talked to my brother-in-law, and he said, you know, I'm not going to waste my time driving to some stupid college. I'll drive you to Walmart or someplace for a job, but I'm not going to waste my time driving to a college. So we figured out a way to get him transportation. But I guess and he went on to college and was successful. But I tell you that story because there's kind of a belief that all kids today have these helicopter parents and they're overindulging them, and that's true for some, but not for a lot. There are a lot of young people that need somebody in their life that can just tell them, you can do this, that believe in them. So the mentoring has turned out to be a key factor. Well, back to the story. So we created this idea. We decided we'd go out and raise money. In the first 60 days, we were able to raise $2.3 million in cash and pledges. We found that people, when they were given an opportunity to make a difference and they understood the vision, that they were willing to step up. So $2.3 million in cash and pledges. Within the first 90 days, we got 180 people to volunteer to be mentors. So we weren't really sure how much this was going to cost, so we decided we would just offer this to 500 students and monitor it. And one of the things Krissy and I have talked about, you know, sometimes you just start running and figure out things as you go along, and that's kind of what we did. We weren't really sure exactly how things were going to work. Let's just go and see what we could do. So we were offering the program to 500 students that first fall. This was in 2008, and fortunately, 499 applied, so we were able to accept everybody. 340 of them actually ended up going to college, all free of charge the next year. One of the things that we discovered in that first year was it only cost us $736 per student, which was way less than we expected. Turns out that about 50%, and this would be true still today, over 50% of these students could go completely for free anyway. They just didn't know it. So a big part of it was just the marketing, but $736. So we felt we got enough money to do this for much longer, for everyone. So we offered it to everyone. Next year, we sent 440 kids to school. The next year, 660 kids to school. And I remember at that time thinking, Krissy and I talking, saying, wouldn't it be great one day before we die, maybe 20 years from now, maybe we can send like 10,000 kids to school. Wouldn't that be a great accomplishment in our life? And then something happened. One of my board members, a guy named Bill Haslam, who was supposed to be speaking here today, who was a city mayor, got a new job as governor. And he calls up and says, this is a great program. You should start rolling this out across the state. So I remember Krissy and I talking and saying, well, can you say, we were at that time, we were TnAchieves, can you say TnAchieves? So we changed our name to TnAchieves, and within 4 years, we were in 27 counties offering scholarships to close to 50% of the population of the state of Tennessee, because we had Shelby County, which was a big part of it. In the year 2013, we sent 5,000 young people to school, matched with 2,000 mentors, all covered with private dollars, and our retention rate was, I'm going to get the number wrong, roughly 40% better than the students that weren't in the TnAchieves program. And you might think, wow, after 5 years, you're now in 27 counties sending 5,000 kids a year to school. That's pretty great. And it was, but what we spent most of our time thinking about was where we were failing. And where we were failing was in at least two ways. One, so we were in 27 counties, but Tennessee has 95 counties. That meant 68 other counties didn't have the program. And the problem with those counties was that I was in charge of raising the money. And the counties that I couldn't raise the money in were the counties that needed us the most, usually the poorest counties. If you're from Tennessee, you can think of some, if you went to Cott County or to Hancock County or to Lake County, there's nobody there to write a $100,000 check. And so unfortunately, the kids that needed us the most, we weren't able to serve. The second problem was that when I would raise money, so I would go to a donor and say, Mark White, I'd go to Mark and say, Mark, I need $100,000, but I don't want it all at once. I want it over 3 years, $33,000 a year for 3 years. And the reason why we would do that, we want to make sure we actually had the money to be able to cover 3 years for the student. So when we said that you got a scholarship, we knew we had the money to cover their 3 years. The problem with that was we could only go to seniors in high school and say, hey, great news, you can go to college. And many of them, they wouldn't really say this, but they would kind of look at you like, man, if I knew I was going to college, I would have actually prepared myself. But we weren't never expected to be able to go. So we always dreamed, wouldn't it be great if we could actually reach kindergartners and their parents and be able to offer this promise to them? But that was way beyond my ability to raise money. So we'll stop at that and then turn to Governor Haslam. Lots of people with great ideas, but you have to have a great leader to make them happen. And Governor Haslam, I wish he was here so we could thank him, but he was the one that helped make this happen. First, he offered me a job in 2013 to be a special advisor. Well, actually, he offered me a job in higher education. I won't mention the job, but I said, no, I'm a businessman. There's no way I want to work for government. It's too slow. It's too bureaucratic. But we kept talking. Said, okay, look, I'll come for free for 1 year. And we made up this title, Special Advisor on Higher Education, and we'll figure out what we need to do. We came up with a goal right away that we called the Drive to 55, which meant that we would take our population from 32% post-secondary attainment to 55% by the year 2025. By the way, we're now at 46%, so we've made some major progress since then. We knew, and we always knew, and then the second question you might have is, well, are you going to make it to 55% by 2025? Probably not. But it was always a very aspirational goal, something that we kind of refer to as a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. But it set our goal high. And it was okay if we fell short a little bit, but it made us think about new and innovative things that we wouldn't have otherwise done. It's a longer story so that we'll save for another day, but we had 5 strategies, but one of which, you would guess it, was that we decided we would like to take this TnAchieves model and make it a statewide initiative. We spent a year working on figuring out ways to finance it. One of the things I remember when I got into the governor's office was the conversations with the governor's team in which they said, no matter what you do, don't touch the Hope Scholarship money because that's just a can of worms. You can't touch it. But that's where the money was. At that time, we had created a surplus of $440 million extra in our Hope Scholarship. We were only required by law to keep $100 million. So after a lot of negotiation, we were able to sweep this $340 million over and do some other adjustments to be able to create a trust to be able to fund what we then changed the name to as of Tennessee Promise. And so in 2014, at the governor's State of the State address, he gave. I was standing right below his podium. It was one of my highlights of my life. But I'm standing below him on the podium, and he gives the whole hour-long State of the State speech. And then at the end, he says, "And I've got one last announcement. Today, we're announcing the Tennessee Promise. We are going to make it so that every student in the state of Tennessee and every county will be able to go to technical and community college for free forever. And it's not going to cost the taxpayers a penny." And, of course, the crowd goes wild. Mark was in the room. He voted on it later. Everybody stands up and applauds, but they're all looking at each other like, how's he doing this? And a few months later, we managed to explain the process, and everybody supported. Here's something that I think is really important about this story, is that when we took the vote in the legislature, 92 out of 99 state representatives voted for it, and 31 out of 32 state senators voted for it. This was a bipartisan program. We spend so much time talking about all the things that we fight about at the nation, at the state, but when we have a big idea, people can come together. And I think what you all are working on in these college promise programs is a big idea that people will come together on. I'll conclude by this, with this one last thought. So I remember also in 2013, Governor Haslam asked, when we were talking about the Drive to 55 one day, he said, "Randy, what do you think is our biggest barrier? What's the biggest challenge for us to be able to accomplish this mission of the Drive to 55? And I came up with a really quick answer then. I've kind of stuck with it because I think it's the right one. So that our biggest barrier is our culture, a culture of low expectations. We just expect too little of ourselves, too little of our children, too little of our community. And I'm hopeful, like with programs like the Tennessee Promise, that we can change that culture. Now, every kindergartner in the state of Tennessee with their parents can sit around the table and plan differently, plan bigger, plan better for their lives, because now they have the opportunity to go to college. That's our story. Again, it's not an overnight success, but it's one that I think is something we'll take a lot of pride in today. Krissy could correct my numbers, but I asked her before I came up to not correct me, because the numbers are constantly changing. But we've sent roughly 140,000 kids now to community college free of tuition and fees. We've trained over 60,000 mentors, and those students have now committed over 4.5 million community service hours across the state of Tennessee. And all that's because of all the great work of the great team that we have. I get to introduce some of them now. Krissy DeAlejandro, our executive director. Am I giving you an introduction? Well, I'm going to anyway. So Krissy DeAlejandro, our executive director, who started this program, helped outline the beginning idea 15 years ago in Mayor Ragsdale's office, came on board as part-time out of the governor's office for about a year, and then has been the leader and the visionary behind this program ever since. And so all the great things that we're talking about is because of her and her great team. And then our very first partner, those first kids that all went off to college, was at Pellissippi State Community College, and they've been led by Anthony Wise for, I guess, 10 years now. Is that right, or 12?
It's almost 13.
Almost 13. We're getting old. And they're joining me on a panel to discuss more about this and maybe take some questions. Thank you all.
Morning.
Well, we just said we would talk about it after Randy gave the history, but I thought that it would be really great for all of you to hear the perspective of the college president who we've been working alongside and the evolution of our partnership.
Yeah, so grateful to have been there from the very beginning, to have been a partner in the work and see how it's grown from a community priority, an initiative, and a community-supported effort at education to become a statewide promise program that exists in perpetuity. I remember when you told me you were discussing that. Maybe it was in the office when you were working as special advisor, and I said, that's a great idea, but you're nuts. But I just think that it's genius the way that the state of Tennessee created that stability. I don't have to worry if my students are going to have the Tennessee Promise next fall, right? Our governor, our legislature, our state committed to providing that in perpetuity. I don't have to worry about that funding existing. It's there for them to go to school, and it's there for their children to go to school in 20 or 25 years. As a president, one of the things that I really appreciated about the Promise is it really aligned with a lot of the things that we needed to do to improve student success as a community college. The deadline has just passed this week for students to apply for Tennessee Promise for next year. So one of the real benefits of TnAchieves, students have to think about in the fall of their senior year, hey, where am I going to go to school next year? Where's my post-secondary path going to take? Many will come here to the University of Tennessee, but even those that are going to go to TCAT Knoxville or Pellissippi State or Roane State or Walter State, local partners are involved early on. They have to think about that now. They have to make that application now. They have to begin the process of working with a mentor a year ahead of time. They have to do their financial aid application early in the spring semester of their senior year. I've been at Pellissippi State 26 years. I cannot tell you when I first started how many students came in and applied to go to community college 3 days before classes start and tried to complete a FAFSA and tried to get that work done. There's no way they could start successfully as a student having just begun that process of that journey 2 or 3 days before the semester began. So one of the things I loved about Promise was it built in a structure that was really beneficial to student success at community and technical colleges. Yes, you may be planning to go to Pellissippi State, but in order to do that, you've got to think about it a year ahead of time. You've got to apply for the Promise. You've got to see what financial aid is available from the federal government and the state government. You've got to see what support you're going to get. You're going to work with a mentor who's going to encourage you along the way, connect you with resources at the institution, and make sure that when the first day of class comes around in mid-August, you've kind of checked all of those boxes. So that successful start really made Promise a successful access program from the very beginning, and we were the beneficiaries. We saw significant student enrollment growth in 2009, 2010, 2011. Part of that was because of the economic recession, but part of it because of this new structure. And we saw increased numbers of students completing because we had an increased population. And I think we'll see where we go from here, but I think one of the things that's changed over the last 6 or 7 years is thinking about Promise as not just an access program, but a success program. So how do we make sure we've made this commitment to provide an opportunity for education? How do we make sure we make the commitment to helping students have the best possible chance of completing that diploma or certificate or degree?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, just sort of coloring around the edges, one of the most beneficial components of Tennessee Promise is that it's ingrained in our culture now. Every high school senior applies for Tennessee Promise. So if you're off to Vanderbilt, the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, or Pellissippi State, you complete an application to the Tennessee Promise. We had a record year this year, 66,636 high school seniors applied. Troy Grant, who's my partner in crime, the Ayers Foundation is another partnering organization to the state. It's a public-private partnership. And so between the two of us, we touch over 90% of high school seniors. And so while, yes, the carrot is there for the community and technical college side of this equation, it really is bigger. It's about shifting culture, not to if I can go to college, but where I'm going to college. And so the funding component, I always say, is the carrot that brings students and families to a program, a holistic approach to the way in Tennessee that we now think about getting students in and then ensuring that they have all the tools to be successful to complete. Over the years, what we say at TnAchieves, the magic equation, is that we're constantly listening to students. So we're the troops on the ground. I have many of my troops here today. We're the troops on the ground, listening to what students are telling us. What they told us 15 years ago that they need is quite different from what they're telling us post-COVID. And so listening to students plus paying attention to the data. So we are a data-rich organization that's constantly evaluating our program's success. So to Anthony's point, in the beginning, it really was about the 3 pillars that Randy talked about: community service, a volunteer mentor, and that last dollar scholarship. But now it's so much more. We've built a proactive relational coaching model for our state's most economically disadvantaged students. So during the high school senior year, they are paired with a coach, a near-peer coach, who's meeting with them on college campuses to say, hey, not only do you have a volunteer mentor, but now I'm here when it gets really sticky. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I can tell you it was sticky for me for a really long time. And so making sure that we can help students navigate and normalize what college will be like, I think is an incredibly important part of this. We've also recently launched what we refer to as complete grants, emergency grant funding. I will tell you that when we took it statewide, it felt like a tidal wave at Tennessee Achieves. I knew there was need across the state, but they came for us in such a way to discuss their food insecurity and their housing insecurity. And so what we know now is that when you have a coach, someone that wakes up every day and is in your corner, and then you add these micro grants, small amounts of money, less than $500 per student, we're actually seeing results on the other side for our most economically disadvantaged students to the tune of 183% increase in their 3-year graduation rate. So it's game changing, and I say that to say that our program is still not fully baked. We're continuing to evolve, and we're leaning into our partnerships with our colleges to say, how can we provide bandwidth? How can we be value add here, not just to the student, but also to the ecosystem at large?
Yeah, I think one of the things we learned during the pandemic was how critical those structures that the Promise program provided in the state of Tennessee, because like many places around the country, we saw significant declines in student enrollment, and really around the students that Promise was really designed to serve, first generation, low income, underrepresented students. We saw how important those mentoring meetings were, and that constant contact and communication, and all of those lines were broken. We saw the college going rate in the state. Krissy is our data checker, fact checker, live fact checker, right? 66% around right after Promise launched in 2015 or so. Statewide down to 51% most recently, right? And so we've got communities in the state through THEC has made a commitment to increasing that, pushing that back up. Communities like Knox County have made a commitment to get to 70% by 2024. Is that next? That's next year. Next year. So a lot of those structures were really disrupted in the lives, not able to serve the students that we wanted to. I do think we've had this transition I've mentioned from really focusing on access to success. And I feel really fortunate to have a partner like Krissy. How do we align something like the coaching model at Tennessee Achieves? It's available to Knox Promise students. It's available to low-income students in other areas that Pellissippi State serves. We developed our own coaching model, not to compete with the coaches, but really to walk alongside. And this fall is the first time I've felt really encouraged about student success data in several years. We're seeing really strong performance in a lot of our top 10 gen ed courses. We're seeing really strong retention numbers for the first time. We're not at 91% like the university is yet, but really strong retention numbers. Some of our highest numbers for students who are underrepresented and underserved, underprepared, under-resourced. And it's really encouraging to see that. And it really is that combination of, how do we show a student what the pathway through the institution? How do we let them know who the individuals that are going to walk alongside them, whether it's somebody in the community as a mentor or our own student success teams that we're building on campus and in partnership. And we're really beginning to see that focus on student success bear some fruit finally. It's been frustrating because the pandemic was really, really challenging for community college. So it was finally great to see not only enrollment going back up because students are returning to campus, but enrollment going up because students are being retained at the campus because of some of these new efforts and partnerships.
I would love Randy's perspective on this too, but one of the things that we have stepped into, so we pilot a lot of things at Tennessee Achieves. I stared for a long time at a poster when I left the mayor's office and landed at Radio Systems, Randy's company, where he took Graham and me in for some time, and we grew the team at the company. But the very first value of Radio Systems was try a lot of things and keep what works. And we lean into that value all the time at Tennessee Achieves. We're not afraid to jump in with both feet and take a big risk, especially if it's in the name of student success. And we've gotten it wrong more times than I like to count. But we also continue to get it right. And one of the things that we're exploring now is this idea of transfer. So quick stat, we survey every student their freshman first semester and ask them, do you have intentions to transfer? And somewhere between 65 and 67% of the students that we serve say, yes, I'd like to begin at a community college or technical college, but my ultimate goal is to earn a bachelor's degree or beyond. but only 24% do in Tennessee. And so we started really looking at that sort of gap, right, between aspiration and reality, and thinking about what we could build at TnAchieves to provide a glide slope into a four-year institution. And what we're finding is it really is a coach. We've put a coach in each of the grand divisions. We took a random sample of students who did raise their hand that they wanted to transfer 900 across the state over 3 cohorts. And what we found is that the person there to say, actually, you go here to talk to financial aid. Actually, you don't need to find yourself on a college campus the first day of campus. Let's visit long before then. Just really small things that we are providing to students. And we've seen that jump at the 24% is a 3-year measure. And in 2 years, it's jumped from 24 to 46 for that cohort. And so again, it's this sort of, I hate to use this phraseology, but like man-to-man combat. But we want to provide students with not just a community college education, but if you want to go beyond that, and Bill Fox, who you'll hear from later, says the bachelor's degree really does matter, and so how can we help them make that leap? Important for the university to receive those transfer students. How are you guys thinking about that?
Well, transfer students is the lifeblood of a lot of our campuses, including UT Knoxville is doing a tremendous job of recruiting transfer students. And so our partnerships with our community colleges is critical. And I think the thing that we've got to work on, I don't think we're there yet, but is to make it as seamless as possible. And it's still too much work to transfer, and we need to knock down some of those bridges. We're working on it. We're working on it, I know, with Anthony. Maybe, Anthony, you might have some comments about specifically some of the things we're doing.
Yeah. So one of the things that's changed over the years is the presence of individuals. We actually did a study. Where's Graham? With College of Communications here at UT. I know it's pre-pandemic time, so it could have been 7 years ago. It could have been 20 years ago, but I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. And one of the things we found was that particularly first-generation low-income students didn't really understand the mechanism for so they might be academically prepared to make the transfer. They might have done very well at Pellissippi State or a similar institution throughout the state of Tennessee, but they didn't really understand financially how they were going to make that work for themselves. And so looking at those transfer scholarships, the support from the four-year institutions is really critical in making sure that those students understand, yes, you've reached a significant milestone, but if you're really going to make this pay off, you don't really need just the general associate's degree from the community college. You really need to make sure that you get that accounting degree or logistics degree or that degree in computer science or cyber defense from the four-year institution if that's part of your path. So really making sure students understand that connection. We at the TBR system have also thought about that disparity between the 24% who actually successfully complete a transfer and the large numbers who want to do so. Our system announced a series of grants, and Pellissippi State was one of 4 recipients of a Reimagining the Community College grant about a year ago. And so the way we've approached the work at Pellissippi State is, and I think Secretary Cantor mentioned this, is really being intentional about the transfer into the institution. Who is responsible at Pellissippi State for making sure a student not only understands what are all the mechanisms that one has to go through in order to become enrolled at the college, but to begin to think about what their career path is. So we've reorganized our academic departments around career communities. So we've got a career community for business, so we can have a conversation around those students who are interested in entrepreneurship or accounting or finance or those sorts of things, and make sure that they are not only paired with a coach who's going to help them stay connected with Pellissippi State as they go through that enrollment process, but they get connected with an academic advisor who's part of that career community, and then we've got Dean Mary Ellen Spencer who's heading up our mentoring program, so we connect either a faculty or staff or a member of our alumni community who can help that student make the transition, think about their career while they're a student, but help make that transition out of the institution and into the world of work or the world of transfer, which will then lead to the world of work. So, that number is discouraging, but I think it's really, trying some new structures, and so we're trying to structure around those career communities. We're trying to build in those supports. I stole the idea of the student success team from Chancellor Plowman when I heard her speak at, I think, a Leadership Knoxville event here. But really making sure every student knows that they feel like they've got somebody they can count on. it's a complicated process if you're a first-generation student. And they may not know what a bursar is, but hopefully if they know what their coach is, they can figure out where they need to go to make sure that their financial aid has covered their fees, and they know where their advisor is so that they're on the right academic path, and they've got that mentor who says, hey, I worked for Radio Systems. This is how you can get a connection there and get your first job there, and maybe get an internship there before you graduate to see if that's the kind of place you want to work.
Krissy, I've got a question for you, but before I do, I'm just thinking, and before I leave the stage, I want to make sure I get at least 2 thank yous in. There's probably more that I need to do, but first, we have with us Chairman of the Education Committee, Mark White, from the state legislature, and thank you, Mark, for being here. And my representative that I voted for every time he's ran for office, Jason Zachary, representative from Knoxville, and also Dave Wright, also one of our esteemed leaders in our community. If you're not from Knoxville, he's serving in so many different roles for many, many years. We appreciate all of you being here. I want to highlight them because as I think about everything we were able to do with the Tennessee Promise, it's because of a couple of things. One, we've got a legislature and a governor, and we've had actually for 3 administrations back, from Governor Bredesen to Governor Haslam and now Governor Lee. So 3 different administrations that have, with their legislature, that have really managed our state's finances well. So we are blessed to have really strong financial, be a real strong financial shape. I think we're got AAA ratings in each one of the rating agencies, surpluses every year. So we're a well-run state, and the state prioritizes higher education. 2 years ago, we had an $8 billion budget surplus. 28% of the funds were reinvested in higher education. So we have a government that is ran very well and prioritizes higher education. So I just want to say thank you guys for that. And then also, just before I leave, I want to make sure I say thank you to Martha Cantor. I remember when Krissy and I announced that we announced Tennessee Promise. About 3 months later, we were up in Washington, D.C., meeting at the White House, and a meeting with some of the President Obama's staff, and we walked out and said, "Hey, can you say?" I remember I said, ask her one time before, "Can you say TnAchieves?" When we were just a little place here, a little organization here in Knoxville, and then we left that meeting and said, "Can you say America Achieves?" And sure enough, and we got to meet Martha that summer. But now, because of Martha's leadership, now we have something called College Promise that is helping to create College Promise programs all across the country. I know Martha will talk more about some of her success later, but just want to say, Martha, thank you for your leadership and your vision for these last 10 years. But Martha prompted this question because she mentioned that there's not enough people doing the transition work. However, TnAchieves is now working on a summer institute, a summer bridge program, and maybe you could share a little bit about those 2 programs.
Sure. So again, under the bucket of try, what we found when we first launched the program is that over 65% of our students required remediation. They graduated from high school and weren't ready for college level work. And so again, we were scratching our heads thinking about how a nonprofit external to the colleges could be helpful. And so in 2011, actually, with Anthony, I talk about this often. Every time I go to Anthony to pilot an idea, he says yes, except for one that I'm never going to let go. But we came to Anthony and we said we'd really love to pilot a 3-week academic boot camp. That is not how we market it to students, by the way. But they would come and they would be involved with college professors on campus for 3 weeks, free of charge, and they would take reading, English, and math at a college level. And the idea is they would test out of remediation. And so we started the first year with 27 students, privately funded by Randy. That is our story often and time again, that when we have big ideas, I do go to Randy, who also says yes to our wild ideas. But we started with 27 students, and what we found is that the very first year, 89% of them either tested out of remediation or dramatically improved their test scores, and 100% of them said they were more confident, to the chancellor's point, because they had been on a college campus, they had met the bursar, they had met the college president. It wasn't as intimidating. So it was as much about acclimation to the culture as it was the academic component. And so year after year, that program continued to grow. And now it is a request that we have with the state every year. It's non-recurring dollars, but we do go back and we're happy to prove that it moves the needle. In fact, the students who participate in our summer bridge program specifically are 83% more likely to graduate in 3 years. And you think about students who start behind and now they are ahead of their peers and actually outpacing their peers. Based on the success we had with that program, we started something called Summer Institute. And I will say, if there's a silver bullet that we've ever figured out at TnAchieves, it is Summer Institute. It is a 6-week program where we leverage, Tennessee has a co-requisite model, and so we leverage that co-requisite model. Students go to campus every day and they're actually enrolled, unlike Summer Bridge. They're sort of taking classes with professors, but we actually enroll students in those co-requisite classes, so they're enrolled in 18 hours over the summer, which sounds really intense, but we feed them every day. They have tutoring support on site every day. We're making sure that all their needs are met, and again, this is free of charge. The 82% of those students are Pell eligible, 100% of the students identify as non-white, and we have had 100% success with that program. The best part of Summer Institute is not only do they eliminate remediation, but they actually have 9 credit hours when they begin in the fall, and their retention and completion rates are over 100% more than their peers. And so for us, the challenge is actually to get the students to give up their summer. If there is a challenge in that space, is convincing a student to come to campus for 3 or 6 weeks. But for us, it is a big part of our work. My whole team is smiling. It's their favorite 3 weeks or 6 weeks that we have every year, because we're on a college campus. You come every year and speak to the students there.
Yeah, and again, I think there are 2 components. One is the academic component, the opportunity to sort of accelerate either into college level coursework or into earning credit for college level coursework by the end of the summer. And then the other is something that sense of community, right? They're on campus, they've met some of their peers, they've met some faculty, they've met some folks who work in administration, they've met community leaders who come in and spend a few minutes with them and kind of share their college journey or bits of advice. And I think those things are really critical for students who might not have that foundational support from other parts of their lives.
What if we take some questions? We have like 15 minutes. We want to take audience questions?
That was going to be my next suggestion. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Anybody have a question? We know we're putting you on the spot. Martha does.
My question is, hold on, Randy, when you, sorry, I'm up here, guys. Randy, you talked about the drive to 55 as a statewide goal, and I think, you know, it really was a point of light for other states to set those kinds of goals. States have all different ways of setting them, different numbers. But when you said we went from 32 to 44%, I think, something like that.
46 now.
And that was,
But who's
I'm
counting?
sorry, 40?
46.
46, okay, sorry. 32 to 46. That's 14 points growth in the number of success stories. That was within 3 years of attending a community college like Pellissippi. So when we add, I'm just sitting here thinking about Drive to 55, when you add the community college transfer students to the university in year 3 or 4, and they finish, you don't take credit for that. And then that 46% goes way up.
I don't think we double count. So if I'm understanding your question, if they get an associate's degree and then follow with a bachelor's degree, you don't get to count an extra percentage or an extra. We don't get to count the 2 degrees toward. It's the percentage of our population that has something beyond high school. So as long as they get something, then they're counted in the 46%. If I understood your question.
I worked for 5 years. I worked for 5 years on getting those transfer students into the database because they were kind of forgotten, and they were a huge success story for the community college, every community college in the country. So the numbers, and then if you went up from 3 years to 6 years, the numbers exceeded your 55, because those are the students that have to work more hours when the economy's up or the economy's down, all kinds of changes in their work life. So those numbers, I just think we need to write about those numbers because they're the critical story.
This isn't a part of your question, but just a comment. Just one of the things that probably all of you are sensing, hearing, in whether you're in Tennessee or in any other state, is this narrative that college is unaffordable, it's too expensive, and if you go, you're going to end up with a degree that's not going to be, you're going to get a great return on your degree. And you also hear from lots of people today, well, you don't need to go to college anymore. We just need more welders and technicians. We do need more welders and technicians. In the state of Tennessee, to be a welder, you have to go to a Tennessee College of Applied Technology. So that's still a college. But I remember when we first created the Drive to 55, one of the people I went to first was Dr. Bill Fox, because it wasn't just about 55% of anything. We needed to have very specific degrees to meet the workforce needs of the future. And the 55%, by the way, was a number that employers and other think tanks were telling us that would be the percentage of the population that would need some type of post-secondary certificate or degree to fill the jobs by the year 2025. So it wasn't just a made-up number. It was to meet the workforce needs of our state. But what kind of degrees would we need? Well, I think was a really important question we wrestled with. And so we were at 32%. To get to 55%, what were those specific skills that we would need? We went to Dr. Bill Fox and his team, and Bill, I think, is going to be talking to you later, and he did a map of what were the actual jobs that we would need that year. 40% of those, by 2025, 40% of the growth was going to be in our TCATs. So TCATs is important. So I guess the important thing that I'm trying to say is TCATs are important, those technical degrees are important. 40% of our entire growth is going to come from them. But what that also means is 60% is still coming from our community colleges and our four-year schools. And so I think the narrative that, well, we don't need anybody to go to a four-year school anymore, we just need more welders and technicians, not true. It's an and, not a but. And so we need more of everything. So one of the things we're doing at the University of Tennessee, working with all the other universities across the state, is we're going to be, actually, this is kind of a new story. But don't tell anybody yet. But next week, November 15th, we're going to be rolling out a new statewide campaign, kind of think like the Got Milk campaigns from years ago. Some of you that are really young probably don't know what I'm talking about, but there used to be these campaigns to promote drinking more milk. Well, we're going to have a statewide campaign talking about the value of a post-secondary degree. If you go to a community college, you're going to make $500,000 more in your lifetime. If you go to a four-year school, on average, you're going to make $1.5 million more in your lifetime. And with programs like Tennessee Promise, I guess the return on investment is infinite because it's free to go to our community colleges. And at UT, this past year, we expanded a program. You kind of see kind of a one-trick pony, keep doing the same idea. So at UT, we have something called the UT Promise that says if you make less than $75,000 in household income, you can go to anyone, which is, by the way, 2/3 of all Tennesseans. So if you're one of those 2/3 of all Tennesseans making less than $75,000, you can come to any University of Tennessee campus free of tuition and fees. So the investment from a financial point of view is minimal, and the return is infinite. So one of the things we're out trying to do is convince more people that going to college is a great investment. And we have some questions.
Yeah, we've got a question right here, and then we're going to start to wrap up. Krissy, would you mind sharing more about the onboarding of your mentors and the management of them?
That's a great question. So we're still out recruiting mentors, always be closing. My boss taught me that, ABC. So if anyone wants to sign up to be a mentor, TnAchieves.org. But we have a lot of mentors in the room. This was a critical component of our work, and it really is focused on the idea of having someone in your corner. And so what we've tried to do in our volunteer mentoring program is really eliminate all the guesswork. And so we recruit, I think Randy coined this, we knock on 90,000 doors to find 9,000 volunteers every year, and it's true. Graham Thomas has led that effort for a very long time for us. But it really is about, do you have 1 hour a month? We provide our mentors with the option of choosing their high school. We pair by gender, as Randy said, and then the idea is to be there when the student has questions. We do provide the interface. We do what's called team meetings across the state. These large, sweaty meetings, it's like a cage match. You get in, there are like 500 students in there, and you get to talk to them about going to college for free. I mean, it really is one of my favorite things to walk into cafeterias and whatnot across the state and be able to say everyone in here can actually not only go to college but earn a degree for free. And then we lean on our volunteer mentors not only to help the students but also to be advocates in the community. Tish Jones has been with us since we launched in Hamblen County in 2011, and we've really cultivated champions around not just the students we serve, but the work that we do. And so there's the mechanics are, there's a mentor handbook, which I'll be happy to share with you. We train our mentors, and then there's ongoing communication. So I think the best thing that we ever did for mentors is that we have what's called a Monday email. So every Monday, like clockwork, our mentors hear from us, and it lays out exactly what they need to know for that week. So then what we ask is that they be the conduit between the program and the student. So it is community-based, and it's somebody that you can run into at your grocery store if you grew up in a small town like me. And all of that is really intentional for us. But every year we've simplified the program to now where we're like, here's a text message that you can send to students, personalize it, but we want to make sure that the lift is so the Randy Boyds of the world who's running an entire university system, or a mom with 3 kids, or a community college president, everybody can say yes to this. It's very consumable. Oh, there's a question over there.
Hold on. This will be the last question.
So for a lot of the things that you're doing, like the coaching, the Summer Institute, from my understanding, the mentor piece might be required, but the things that are not required, how are you incentivizing students, or how are you like encouraging them to take part in these things? Because I feel like that's a big challenge post-COVID, is getting them to do something outside of going to class.
Yeah, so this is internal to TnAchieves, but we'll share it with you since Randy's sharing his secrets. We say we're a program of harassment, lovingly, right? But we are constantly bombarding them with opportunity. I will say that for us, the real magic is our near-peer coaches. Many of our coaches have been through the Tennessee Promise program, transferred to a 4-year institution, and can literally share that they were just on this journey that the students will be embarking on. They're all energetic and young, and students seem to just pour out to our coaches, and so they become this trusted resource. So they're bright, and they're armed with all the information, but they look very much like the student, and they have been on a journey similar to the student, and for us, that is just gold. But we also incentivize, so the way our emergency grants work is that if you ask us, say, I am struggling with gas, I need a transportation gift card, we give it to them in very small increments of $100, and every time they ask for it, they do have to connect with their coach. So we don't ask for paperwork, there's no red tape, but we're building and cultivating those coaching relationships in a really intentional way, because every year the funding runs out on completion grants, but the coach is still there, and that's the important piece of this. So we've gotten creative on how we've thought about the incentivizing of working with the coach, but to be honest with you, I watch how our students, like I'm an old lady, they don't want to tell me anything, but they really want to talk to Allison or Baylor or the individuals on our team who are on college campuses and are excited to see them. What's been really cool about Pellissippi specifically, and not true for the other 12 colleges, is we've seamlessly integrated, as Anthony said, so a student has one place to go. So they come in and they have a meeting with their coach, and they're not searching around for where to go. Their coach is in it's Stay Strong Center, right? Yep. Which has been really great for us too. It's a one-stop shop for both organizations.
Yeah, so when we developed our coaching model, we really started with a model designed by Tennessee Promise. And I am concerned, when we've got data that shows, right, if you don't talk to your coach at all, your retention rates are below average or average or below. But if you visit with your coach 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, we see those numbers soar. So part of it's doing that seamless alignment. So a student comes in the center, they just know that, hey, Allison's my coach. I'm supposed to meet with him. I don't know if they know who they work for, and I really don't care if they know who they work for. I just want them to know that there's a person there that cares about them, about their educational journey, and can make sure that they kind of stay on path and get the resources they need. Sometimes the resource is, hey, we need to refer you to completion funds, or it may be, hey, Pellissippi State's got the Student Opportunity Fund. Kind of works in the same way, just making sure that we wrap that student around with the resources. But the data has been really encouraging about the number of students who are willing to pick that up. I'm sure we're going to be sharing more, because really pleased with persistence and retention numbers over the course of the last year. Again, it finally feels like we've turned a corner and can focus on building some success for our students and for the college as well.
Well, let's give a round of applause to Randy, Krissy, and Anthony. Thank you for sharing and for this great discussion. For a very special presentation, I'm going to please welcome Martha Kim.